In the spring of 2022, we traveled to Colombia, and there we met with Esteban Valle Garcia, who's One Kingdom's Latin America ambassador. And we traveled to Bucaramanga, which is home to our One Kingdom partner and world radio speaker, Ricardo Martinez. Radio is still the most popular medium around the world. And Ricardo, to me, Ricardo's been one of the most professional. He's even been on the cutting edge of radio. Even before the pandemic, he was one of our first radio partners to start using Facebook Live and YouTube and using these digital platforms to take the radio into areas that were not being received. But at the end of the day, radio is just a doorway to discipleship. He doesn't just throw out the gospel on the radio, he's drawing people into community. And we saw this play out in the refugee ministry that they worked through on Saturdays. There were several women that came to know the Lord through the radio.
And each were just kind of searching for what was next, like what was missing and why there was no joy. And so individually they had turned on a broadcast, listening to the radio. One in particular was even listening to her own church's radio broadcast, and Ricardo's broadcast came on afterwards. And the tone change between her church's radio broadcast and what Ricardo was offering really just intrigued her. What he offered her in the radio broadcast was some hope. And so she just kept pursuing it in the radio.
Gunshots on the border between Colombia and Venezuela. They've become frequent in these past few weeks. The result? This. Thousands of Venezuelans are crossing this river into Colombia, fleeing from the crossfire.
So in the neighboring country of Venezuela, there is a lot of political turmoil. There's a socialist dictator there, and it's created some really difficult economic struggles for the Venezuelan people. They're not able to work, they're not able to raise money for their families, so they're fleeing for new opportunity. Most of them are pouring into Colombia, and a lot of them end up in Bucaramanga. Because of that, there's not a lot of jobs for them, there's not a lot to do. In fact, Colombians are not very welcoming of them either. They don't care for the Venezuelan people that are in there, but Ricardo and his team are ministering directly to these Venezuelan refugees. He went to go visit a family. They have like 5 kids, and it's in a really tough neighborhood. Well, then he walks outside, and there were all these children like waiting. They thought that, they wanted to know what was going on. He realized that there are dozens and dozens of other children that needed support. Ricardo, being an orphan himself, he took to this ministry, and then they began this ministry of presence where they are just there every week pouring into these children.
His passion comes from his own background, and he sees these children who may not all be orphans, but are orphaned in their own way. They are very displaced. They don't have what they need to have a thriving childhood, but he knows, like, if he shows up and Estella shows up on a Saturday to offer them some structure, that they also have hope. Ricardo said when he first met these children, his desire was to give them all the material blessings that they needed. And then he said he had a moment where he realized, I am not Santa Claus. And he knew that he could show up every Saturday with more and more material blessings, and the hole that these children have would never be filled. His ministry is of presence.
Two of the things that we preach all the time at One Kingdom is, who is God, and then who are you to God? And Ricardo is doing just that. He's telling people through the radio program, who is God? Who is this almighty creator that you need to know and have a relationship with? But then he's going out into the community, getting his hands dirty on the front lines, and he's telling people who they are to God. They know who they are in the kingdom, and that makes all the difference in the world.
To visit Ricardo and Estella just really made me realize how God really does raise up the right leader in their own nation. It takes a lot of trust, I believe, like on the side of One Kingdom, to believe that the right people that far away are doing the right thing. But to show up and to see Ricardo pouring all of himself, not only into world radio, but then into so many other things that are producing fruit. It was just that reassurance that God will do it. Like, He will raise up the right people in the right place with the right heart. And Estella alongside of him, it just was that great confirmation that what we do matters because God is moving in those countries.